I know a lot of you guys may not like Rey, or some might like Rey, I don't know. But I'm just going to be real with you guys. Rey isn't who you think she is, some might say. If I directed her, that is. Because once I finish this episode, you guys might have a new look for her based on my direction if I was able to direct it. Rey is one of the most popular characters in Star Wars, but yet her lack of backstory, in my opinion, makes her a very polarizing figure and OP. Basically, overpowering because you can't just randomly defeat a Sith Lord, and you can't just, out of the blue, defeat a cloned Emperor, even if it was not the real Emperor. It's kind of OP either way, even though they have all the Jedi and all that stuff on her. Yeah, kind of a rip-off Avengers Endgame, but you guys get the hint. So anyway, guys, this is the full backstory, if I directed Disney Star Wars, about Rey. Before he became known as the Emperor and Darth Sidious, he was known as Chief Palpatine. Then he would later on become the Senator of Naboo, where he was close to politics. But he used the front as a senator to cover up his identity as Darth Sidious, and of course, later on, uncover his plan for a galactic empire. Yet, he also orchestrated the Clone Wars so he could also help get someone else to his side for the Empire. Anakin Skywalker, who became Darth Vader. He also was notorious for pain and Sith lightning, which he would use on his apprentice's son, Luke, which we all know the apprentice Darth Vader. His notorious cold-hearted attitude will give pain to anyone. The Sith lightning he leashes out is so painful that is just painful enough that you will almost die. But thankfully, though, Anakin was able to defeat Darth Sidious, or the Emperor, by throwing him down the ventilation shaft, destroying his form, and succeeding victory for the rebellion, so they take over the Republic. Thus, that is the end for Emperor Palpatine in general. Or is it, if you think about it? A young woman by the name of Ashma was raised in Coruscant and was chosen by the Empire to become one of the most famous soldiers, and even Palpatine sensed something was different about her. So, he decided to keep his lineage alive through her by using the Force to create a child through her. She would flee and would give birth to the child in a planet known as Rylan. And the child's name is Couture's Palpatine. Unfortunately for Ashma Tasman, while she raised her son, she could not hide the truth about who his father really was for long. And once she told him, he was put in great fear, and she decided against her full will to give him up for his safety. It was for the best. Ashma Tasman would later die of a broken heart. Couture's was known as the one that was Palpatine's son, later on when he was in his young adult years. But he decided he didn't want anything to do with him, despite the chance he could have Force abilities. But seeing how his father's Force abilities were painful based on the readings, he'd had to flee. He would find a woman by the name of Ari Kenobi. Now, Ari has a very interesting story arc, which I will explain in a sec. But let's kind of go back on Couture's real quick. Couture's, unlike his father, was very caring. Even as a young child, he always believed in caring for other people besides himself. It was one of the reasons he married Ari, because he saw her caring spirit as well, and how willing she was to protect him. Ari is the daughter of Obi-Wan Kenobi, who actually did have a love affair, because if you guys remember from the Kenobi books, he did lead the Jedi Order for another woman, but that was a mistake. Her mother is known as Taraya Dempsey. Both Obi-Wan and Taraya were very close, but sadly, Taraya died in Order 66 and Obi-Wan was forced to give up Arari for her safety. While he was on Tatooine, Obi-Wan not only had to keep an eye on Luke, but he also used the Force to connect with his daughter. Before he died, he left her this message. My time is coming, my is still raining, and one day it will fall when the chosen one rises up. May the force be with you. One would still keep in contact with his daughter through the force, but she decided to disconnect from the force to protect her daughter, and she would die along with her husband on Jakku. Thus, that is the end of Rey's parents. But let's talk about Rey. Rylu, a planet that's known for Twi'leks, was where Rey was born. Rey's parents kept her there for a little bit to keep her away from the First Order. However, they couldn't save her for long, because now, with the Emperor coming back, this will be explained in a much later video, Rey had to be in another planet away from Rylu, so they took her to a very far planet, Jakku. Unfortunately, Rey's parents met their end. However, Rey didn't know her parents had died. I mean, it's obvious. They were both Force users because they have Force sensitivity, right? I mean, Palpatine, Kenobi, and all that? Wrong. They disconnected from the Force, so they wouldn't have to deal with all that. However, Rey triggered that when she herself connected with the Force herself as a young girl. However, after her parents dropped her off at Jakku, she disconnected herself from the Force. And ever since then, she had to learn as a Salvager how to survive on her own, learning the skills of other people and also self-teaching herself her own ways of survival. Rey had a unique ability that several people have called memorizing through sight, meaning that she can memorize by what she sees, rather than using the Force just so that she could learn that tactic. So basically, Rey is a very strong character, but it took a long time for her to develop as a character. But still, Rey still missed her parents, and she wondered if she'll ever see them again. But she never did. But still, heard about the rumors about the Resistance, and had heard so much about it. In fact, some of the stuff she salvaged were either First Order parts or Resistance parts. She even found a Resistance helmet. However, despite learning all that and her yearning to be free from Jakku, we still get to see how she grew up. Let me explain at least 3 things that she learned on Jakku that would help her throughout her entire life. Number 1, the staff. The staff, in this case, was picked up by another Salvager when she was fighting. You see, Salvagers in this time of Jakku, and even back thousands of years ago, back in the Knights of the Old Republic, play that second game by the way so you can understand what I'm talking about, it was hard! Those guys are savages! No pun intended. Okay, maybe it was. But you get the hint. Those guys are dangerous and they can be violent. They will do whatever it takes to get what they want. However, to answer your question, maybe why Rey was alone, the reason she was alone was because Salvagers were basically afraid of her. That's right, I'm saying it perfectly. Salvagers are afraid of Rey because she has learned how to defend herself, she's learned how to physically defeat them, and because of her abilities to use a staff, obviously, but also learning hand-to-hand combat, she would become a much more powerful person. And she didn't have to use the Force to do that. Kind of interesting, huh? Of course, even with all that training, her time to leave Jakku was still far away. Until one day. So now we know that Rey is a Kenobi and a Palpatine. However, it's important to know that her parents sacrificed their lives to protect their daughter from the evil Sidious or Palpatine. But yet it's important to know that Rey is not some Mary Sue that randomly had these abilities to fight back. And yet, she's still got time to develop at this point. And this is the conclusion of her backstory, that we know she was born on Rylu, we know she was raised in Jakku on her own by being a salvager or scavenger, if you guys looked up the word. And also we know that she did not randomly get natural abilities. She actually had to work to get those abilities so she became a much stronger character.
He's amazing. He has anger issues. That is the man himself, Kylo Ren in a nutshell, when he was introduced into Disney Star Wars in The Force Awakens. But let's talk a little bit more about it. When Kylo Ren was introduced into Star Wars, they expected him to be one of the most menacing Sith Lords out there. But technically, he wasn't a Sith Lord, but rather a dark side user who came up with the name Kylo Ren. But he's not an official Sith Lord, because he would have had something like Darth Ren or something like that, like all that. But to be honest, before you guys go out in the comment section about he should be a good guy or a bad guy, keep in mind I already made my decision. Now, before we go any deeper, we already know the backstory of Kylo Ren. He is the son of Han Solo and Leia. So this means he's a Solo. However, I am going to make a major disclaimer here. He is not going to be named Ben in this series that I will be directing if I direct Disney Star Wars. His name will be Jason from the Legends. That's right, guys. We're going to go name him Jason. Jacen. But before we go any deeper into that, let's go to his backstory about how he became a Jedi turned Sith follower, basically. Kylo Ren, or Jason, was born on the planet Shakandra. I apologize for saying that. If I misspelled worded, please let me know in the comments below. But he was born to Han and Leia. And he was born as an only child. But he had fair skin, dark brown hair, brown eyes, all that. Now, something to know, he was raised into the new Jedi Order that was led by none other than his uncle, Luke Skywalker, obviously. As he would grow to be very powerful in the ways of the Force. Unfortunately, like Count Dooku and his grandfather, Anakin Skywalker, he was very impatient and he felt like he was being limited, and also he wanted to be more powerful. This was a natural trait, to be very powerful and a leader, but also be strong. Believing that strength and power are two key things to become a great warrior. However, Luke sensed this and had to talk to him from time to time to ease down a little bit. But unbeknownst to the Jedi, Jason was being led by a man known as Snoke. We all know Snoke, however, we will go into that video about him another time. But let's kind of get to what happened. Snoke was a great Sith Lord follower, basically, because he actually followed the ways of the Sith and became a Dark Lord himself. That name has yet to be determined. As Jason was being poorly influenced by Snoke, he was going down a much darker path than anyone ever expected him to be. One day, Luke was going to his tent Jason's tent when he felt an uneasy presence in the Force. That's when he discovered that Jason had fallen deeper into the dark side and uncovered Snoke. Suspecting that he'll attack, Luke took his lightsaber out and was ready to confront him, but Jason panicked and decided that it was the right time to make his move. He used the Force and knocked down the tent and knocked down Luke. When he got out, that was when he attacked the new Jedi Order that Luke had once created. When he got in there, he attacked most of the Jedi students. Only one survived. That is Luke's son, Ben. His own aunt, Mara Jade Skywalker, was killed by Jason. Yes, I have put Mara Jade in there, but she will again be mentioned in another video. And during this time, he decided to burn to the ground. And thus, that was how he would flee to join the First Order. The First Order was already created at the time when he did this, because Snoke helped build it up. And that is what happened to Jason Solo. He was raised to be a Jedi, and he was raised to be a great leader, but sadly he fell to the dark side and allowed the temptations of it to lure him in. His emotional passions was his undoing, and he would become known as Kylo Ren. That's his backstory, people. I mean, was he meant to be a leader? Yes, but he squandered that for the wrong reason. Finn is one of those characters that definitely deserves to be a much better character than he is now. I mean, Disney Star Wars made him from being one of the most promising characters to develop to, for some, being one of the most wasted characters. He went from this expected character that went from the First Order to fleeing the First Order to becoming part of the Resistance, but then slowly on from there, he began to be used less later on. It's no surprise that John Boyega wasn't very happy with how his character developed. Part of the reason why Disney's gonna Disney Plus him, in his opinion. But if I was directing Disney Star Wars, John Boyega, I would make your character, a Finn, a lot better. This is a very sad thing, but Finn, like Rey, has not exactly had a good backstory. So let's give him a good backstory that might help him out a little bit, okay? But before that, to summarize real quick, Finn would have been a much better character. I mean, a guy that fled the First Order, taken as a child to become part of the First Order, and now later on becoming a hero. But yet, there's a lot in the middle of the development that never really was developed. Basically, more about his past, which was never really developed that much. But Let's get to that though. In this case though, I decided that Finn was born on Cloud City. Sound familiar to you guys? To you old school Star Wars fans, or maybe some of you ones that are new Star Wars fans, might be familiar with Lando Calrissian. In this case, Lando will be his father. His mother, I'm going to give her the name Tendra Resonant. To be fair, that is the name of his wife. You guys remember from the last episode I brought some of the legend characters back, so I'm not going to just hold back. I'll just focus on Disney canon. However, the story is for Finn, as he said in The Force Awakens, he was taken as a child away from his family. In this case, the First Order attacked Cloud City, and Lando, who's familiar with Cloud City being attacked because when he was younger, when the Empire attacked, he was instantly on the move despite having to make a deal, only they altered the deal. You guys are familiar with Darth Vader doing that to him. In this case, however, there really was no one to double cross him. They attacked and he immediately went into action to keep his family safe. But sadly though, he and his wife, while fighting, were not successful in fighting back this time. His wife was shot by the First Order stormtroopers, who actually had a much better aim than the Empire stormtroopers, and she ended up passing away from the wounds, and Finn was taken. Ever since then, however, Finn was taken to be used as an example of a child that was raised, trained, and developed in the First Order Empire. I'm just gonna say that it's just a second version of the Empire for the First Order, but I digress. Sadly, however, for them, the First Order, they never were successful into training him to be a stormtrooper that would be willing to fight and defend the First Order at all costs, and that's part of the reason he was in the sanitation department, basically in any area that the First Order will go to. Now, a bit of a disclaimer here, there isn't a Starkiller base, and there will not be a Starkiller base. Finn was basically taken to wherever they would go, and I will simply say one of the main places they go is the planet Korriban. That's gonna be talked about in our episode on the planet, but let's continue. However, Finn would later, over time, lose the memory of his family, other than that he knew he was taken from them. Yet, something else went on in his head. Even though his parents were not force sensitive, he was used to feeling things. So, in secret, he would try to meditate because he had been hearing about how people meditate through the Force. Because obviously, one of the things that Kylo Ren would know is his father, Darth Vader. But Finn never really got that close to Kylo Ren, which is part of the reason why you don't see much of a development between him and Kylo Ren to begin with. And again, in the last episode, Kylo Ren is Jason Solo, so let's continue on from there. Before we continue with the whole force sensitivity part, let's talk about something that was also very bad for him while in training with the First Order. The worst thing that happened to him while he was in training was indeed Captain Phasma. Captain Phasma in this case basically was ruthless. She basically made Finn work very hard and basically scolded him quite a bit. Thus, his distaste in the First Order really started because of her. But still though, Finn was force sensitive because he just let his mind go and connect with the Force. However, that was not a good thing because the First Order, as much as they would love to see another Force user be part of the Sith ranks, Snoke didn't want him, and he basically tried very hard to discourage him in a way. But Finn was already discouraged enough by the First Order as it is. After he went on Jakku, and he was witnessing the death of one of his troopers because he never saw firsthand of war or any battle, he ended up getting a big reality check. So Finn left the First Order because of all that happened. From being a child taken by them to being trained to do things that are against his own morality, to later seeing the reality of what happens if people are against him for what is wrong. Despite the training he was also given in the sanitation department in the First Order, he really didn't see the point of using that other than just to remain clean. I mean, that's part of the reason why in the Star Wars universe he was one of the cleaner characters, other than that one time he was in a machine because of his injuries against him in the original. But hey, don't worry, things will change. I promise you guys. Things will change. Basically, though, Finn would not be this character that was wasted. In fact, in my direction, Finn will be probably another developed character with a good enough backstory and reconnect with his father, Lando Calrissian, later on. Everyone who knows Star Wars for a long time before Disney Star Wars knows about Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker is one of the most popular Jedi in the Star Wars universe. In fact, he's probably one of the best. The problem is, though, Disney Star Wars destroyed him pretty bad. Well, mainly by destroying, they destroyed his character, especially in The Last Jedi. So, if I were directing Disney Star Wars, here's how I would make him a lot better. So instead of the whole backstory and all that, since everyone pretty much knows he's the son of Padme and Anakin and all that, let's just focus on how I would change things up. First off, in The Force Awakens, it would be best to have an explanation to why he disappeared. Luke disappeared, if I directed Disney Star Wars, because he needed more time to grow in the Force. He may have the most powerful Force abilities, but even a most powerful Jedi might need a few tips or two. So he went to the island in order to gain some advice from many Jedi that have passed on many years before. From Qui-Gon Jinn, who trained Obi-Wan after Revenge of the Sith, to Mace Windu, and even his own father. And of course, I am going to say this. He even got trained by Ahsoka Tano, who ended up joining with the Force, Arlia Sakura, but there was some Jedi that weren't mentioned that I'm going to mention anyway. Bastila Shan, because she is the legendary Jedi in Knights of the Old Republic, and I believe that should have been canon in the first place for good. And also Statiel Shan, Bastila's daughter. So yeah, Luke got a lot of training. Even the ladies got a chance to help. But the biggest issue is why didn't he help the Resistance? Well, like in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, Luke had a connection with Darth Vader. And he had a connection now to Jason Solo. Remember my Kylo Ren video? That's why he's named Jason. So, if he was with the Resistance and he had a connection, he would endanger the Resistance and possibly even destroy them single-handedly because of his connection. When you're connected with the Force, you connect with a lot of people, Jedi and Sith alike. That's why you have to be really careful if you connect with the Force, which will be explained much later about Rey and others, about how she never connected with the Force more often, which I did explain in her video, but I will explain more about the Force itself in another video. But anyway, that's the Force Awakens part that I will explain about Luke, about why he went off to the island, because he needed time to train, but also wanted to protect the Resistance. Then, of course, he reappears later on to fight Kylo Ren. But instead of the old, oh, I've given up on you, you're not worth it to me anymore, it's more of he should try to see the good in him, like he did with his father in Return of the Jedi. Didn't people forget that? But of course, in this case, he did fight Kylo Ren. He fought him pretty badly, to the point where instead of it was a whole Force projection, it was an actual fight. He ended up defeating Kylo Ren. But, of course, like he did to his father, he showed mercy and didn't try to kill him. Of course, Jason was like, "Why didn't you kill me back in that tent?" His response, "It's not the Jedi way." It never was a Jedi way to kill someone just because they fall into the dark side. Instead, the Jedi should always try to look for what is good and never give up. That is the hope that Luke always clings on, yet it was taken away from him thanks to Disney Star Wars today. Now, again, disclaimer, I am not trying to change Disney Star Wars, this is how I would do it. So what happens to Luke? After he defeats Jason, he ends up leaving with one important note to tell the Resistance, "May the Force be with you." And the most important thing of all, always cling to hope in the Force. Now, of course, he has to be in the shadows until his time will come, which explains the rise of Skywalker. Because Luke now has a connection with another Force user, his own son, Ben Skywalker. So Ben Skywalker will be the last Skywalker. And so Luke, in The Rise of Skywalker at the time, instead of The Last Jedi where he helps grow the Resistance by connecting with them, he ends up using what he taught the Resistance and also helped his son grow in secret in The Last Jedi in order to help him become the stronger character in Rise of Skywalker. He wasn't mentioned in The Force Awakens because his son had shut him out with the Force, but then of course he decides to reappear after hearing that his father had returned. But at first his son would probably have some resentment. Explain in another video in the future. But now Luke would pass away to the Force of old age, but he would use his knowledge to give to his son in order to help the Resistance once and for all. Poe Dameron was one of the most popular characters in the Star Wars universe by the Disney trilogy. Yet, people don't really know about his backstory unless you find out that his parents were also part of resistance that were led by Han Solo. So, to kind of back this up a little bit, let's go into Poe Dameron's backstory real quick. Poe Dameron was born on Yavin 4. His mother, Shira B, and Cass Dameron, his father, were part of the resistance during the time when they were against the First Order. Now, keep this in mind, this concludes and proves that Poe became a resistance fighter because of his parents. So, let me explain a little bit about that if I directed it. So, as a young boy, his parents, now, reminder, this is if I directed, were basically attacked by the First Order. Because of this, they would join the resistance to fight against them. And of course, they had to leave Yavin 4. Basically, during his time around the galaxy, he would learn how to fly, he would learn how to fight, and he would also learn how to smuggle. Oh, yeah. And one more thing, his parents do die in the resistance. Because the war itself against the First Order is no easy feat, people will pass away. Anyway, moving on. Poe Dameron basically was one of the hard, tough fighters of the resistance because he had a lot of experience growing up. However, it doesn't mean, however, he's perfect. As a matter of fact, he's a bit headstrong, a very easily character flaw. Now, before you guys ask me, is he gonna meet Finn in this one? I'm not gonna answer that because that's too much into Force Awakens, which is basically the first film that we see him in. Basically, though, on Jakku, which is where we do see him, however, he does have a mission. However, Jakku will probably be the last thing you're going to hear because he had a mission and a message about Luke Skywalker. Now, remember in the last video, Luke Skywalker actually left to protect the Resistance and also train himself to become a better Jedi. So anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. It's a little shorter than most, but anyway, guys, I hope you guys enjoy it. Anyway, the fate of Poe Dameron will be... Did you guys really think I was going to expose that information? You heard me talk about the characters from the first 5 episodes. Rey, Kylo Ren, Finn, Luke Skywalker, and Poe. But what about some of the minor characters that haven't really been mentioned much or not mentioned at all? Here are 5 characters in this video. So this might be a 2-parter because I might have to look for 5 more. Let's get to it. Number 1, Captain Phasma. Based on what we learned from Captain Phasma, she's like the head leader of the Stormtroopers. Probably part of the reason they actually have a good shot. Hey, look, a Yark Sweet Fighter. Fire! Shut you down, Poe Dameron. You guys get the hints. It is obvious that Stormtrooper shootings have been a little bit more accurate than the originals, because, as you guys know, they are not good during the days of the Empire, but the days of the First Order, they became more accurate, despite their helmets looking like a duck. But on a serious note, though, Captain Phasma was probably the main reason why stormtroopers are basically more active and more accurate. However, it doesn't mean all of them can make it. Finn is an exception of a stormtrooper that actually didn't make it because he couldn't take it anymore and he didn't want to be around the First Order anymore. Despite her attempts to help him, he eventually decided to leave. So you can't really blame Finn for leaving. Now, the next thing I wanted to bring up is number 2. Number 2, Ben Skywalker. That's right, we're putting Luke's son into the equation. As I already briefly mentioned him in my Luke Skywalker video, Ben Skywalker was trained in the Jedi Academy until his cousin, Jason, basically destroyed it, and he had to flee, disconnected from the Force so he could survive, and also remain hidden. As long as you don't connect to the Force, you should be alright. As long as you don't have a connection to someone else, which is basically his cousin. So it makes it very hard for Ben to kind of disconnect from his cousin. But after a while, he reconnects with the Force to save the Resistance and eventually reconnect with his father. This was a very important point because now Ben will become one of the stronger Jedi along with Rey and Finn. You'll find out in another video. So basically, Ben will become one of the stronger Jedi of his time. Basically, as he grows, he has a connection with his father and his mother, Mara Jade, who I will talk about in a bit. So basically, it's safe to say that Ben Skywalker is the, indeed, last Skywalker, so he will be the rise of Skywalker. Number 3, Mara Jade. For those that are familiar with the Legends, or formerly known as Extended Universe, thanks Disney! Basically, Mara Jade was a close advisor to the Emperor, or Chief Palpatine, Emperor Palpatine, Darth Sidious, you guys get the hint. And before he died, he basically wanted her to kill Luke Skywalker, and she swore she would kill him, but after a while, she changed her tune about him, and eventually, love broke through. Can't sing the song, because copyright. Okay. Love Broke Through is by Toby Mac, by the way. And also, Mara Jade will become one of the strongest fighters in the Jedi Academy and in the wars that would follow. Unfortunately, when the Jedi Academy was attacked by Jason, she sacrificed her life to protect the Jedi. So Mara Jade's sacrifice will be the main thing that keeps the Resistance going. It did shake up her husband, Luke Skywalker, but he would use his grief to pass time and also train himself to be stronger. Number 4, Admiral Ackbar. Admiral Ackbar is another character that basically would help command some of the troops and also fighters in the Resistance. Not get killed off in Last Jedi! But to point something out, I will say this, he's not going to get killed off. I'm just going to say that right off the bat. He will still be a key character for the Resistance and Rebels. And it's safe to say that he is an underrated character that deserves a lot more screen time and a lot more background. But hey, he's a minor character, but yeah, he's a key character that would help people understand how hard it is to get out there into the world of the Resistance and the galaxy. And also understands the responsibility the galaxy laid upon him whenever he leads certain areas of the army. So Admiral Ackbar is another character that I believe should be recognized more. Number 5, Lando Calrissian. Obviously, after Return of the Jedi, he would go back to Cloud City to help lead the people that he once led before the Empire took over. Unfortunately, later on, while he settled down, had a son, that ended up backfiring when the First Order attacked and everything fell apart and his son got taken away, his wife got killed, so he had to flee. Lando, however, did not want to forget what he did against the Empire and basically saved the rebels and led them on a space battle on the second Death Star. So it's safe to say, though, that instead of him just getting found in The Rise of Skywalker, he would be found much early on and basically come back to the Resistance to help them against the First Order, because he knew that if he didn't do something, or if no one steps up, the Resistance is basically doomed. Even with some of the most elite fighters, they have to stick together and stand together so they could be able to fight back, as hard as that is. So basically, Lando Calrissian is basically underrated, again, as I said before, and also he and Han will continue their bond as best friends, as well as make sure they have short talks and gamble and have fun. Even when the tragedy of Jason Solo becoming Kylo Ren, they basically still kept in touch in a way, even to the point of the Millennium Falcon getting taken away. But anyway, that is basically Lando as a key character, basically. So in conclusion, all these characters that I have mentioned will be key factors to the Resistance. So this will probably be the Resistance side, except for Captain Phasma. 4 out of the 5, which is 80%, will be part of the Resistance. Captain Phasma will remain with the First Order. I am finally doing part 2 of If I Direct Disney Star Wars, part 2 of the characters that should be more developed, that are minor characters, or just key characters in general. We're going to start off with the obvious, Han Solo. Oh my goodness. Now, yes, he was a key character in The Force Awakens, hardly mentioned in Last Jedi, and was somehow giving a projection in Rise of Skywalker. But I think he should have been done so much better than how he was treated. Yes, Han Solo probably would die off, but not the way you do it. It's like, hey son, how you doing? I need help. Okay, I'll help you. Here you go. Shot right through you. Come on. That's ridiculous. You should not ever have to write something like that. If I were Han Solo, I'd go out fighting, okay? Like, yeah, Chubby! Boom. It's obvious that he is going to be a key character in my Star Wars series if I directed it. But he would not be a major character, but he would be a developed key character that helped out with Rey and Finn, obviously. I say Finn because, spoiler alert, he gets some training from both him and Leia, who I will bring up in a little bit. Now, Han Solo would die in action. He would die a fighter, not by his son, Jason. So basically, Han will be a true war hero. Again, I don't know if The Force Awakens made him a true war hero since he tried to save his son. He was listening to his wife. Yes, I call Leia his wife, which leads to the next one. Leia. Solo! Not Leia Organa. Come on. If she married Han, she will always be a Solo with Skywalker lineage dating back to Anakin. So anyway, Leia basically would be a much developed character. She would be more of a teacher to Rey and Finn, like her husband. And also, she would not just be the person that just doesn't want to see Luke, but rather she keeps the promise, which I've said in the Luke video, check that out, that she respected what he was trying to do, protect the Resistance, and also make sure that they're safe. This will completely change the whole timeline of The Force Awakens, but it leads to a point that Leia is respectful. Also, Leia would still learn her Jedi training and not just stop training because of some flashback that her son died. I'm sorry, and I'm going to be really harsh on this part, but sometimes the Force could be very triggering in a way where darkness and even the light are very conflicting. So basically, Leia should not have quit her training in Rise of Skywalker, as mentioned. Instead, she would continue her training and also still be an example for future Jedi and also other people, including the obvious Rey and Finn. I know I said it already, but you guys get what I mean. Number 3, Snoke. Okay, guys, let's be honest. Although Rise of Skywalker says Emperor Palpatine created Snoke, let's just cut that part out. Like, now. Instead of Snoke being created by Sidious, he was rather one of the many people who stayed on the dark side of the Force and actually was very enticing. That doesn't mean, however, that he did not follow the Emperor. Instead, he probably looked up to him through the Force, looked up to him through teachings, and was probably involved in bringing back with Darth Sidious, future video coming up, and also manipulated Jacen. So it's kind of obvious that he is a very key character involving in the dark side of the Force. If he was not a Sith, then what is he? Just some sort of alien that had some dark powers? Nice try. So instead of Snoke being like Darth Maul, where he became half of what he used to be, he becomes a very key character that basically is very strong. And if he gets killed off, it will most likely not be Jacen Solo. You know what? I'm just going to say it will not be Jacen Solo. Instead, it will most likely be either Rey stepping up after a lot of training, or Finn, or Ben Skywalker. You guys can come up with your theories down in the comments below. I would really like to see those. So basically, Snoke should be a more developed character. So yeah. Number 4, she was not mentioned in the Star Wars universe, at least canon-wise, Jalen Solo. Wait, what? You might be like, Aaron, what the heck? It's obvious now that I believe it will be good to bring that he had a twin, but it's also important that she ran away for protection like Luke and several other people. But it's important to know that Jalen would be a very key character, but it's also important not because it's another female-led role in the Star Wars universe. It's also important that she will be a good friend to Rey. So it's very important to kind of have some sort of legend/canon mixed up together for Jalen. I can't really give too much detail about her, other than the fact that in the original book, she did kill Jacen in the comics. So it's safe to say that I will definitely add her, but when I will add her, I don't know. Also, guys, you might be wondering who inspired me to think about that. Empire Fan 101. It's kind of obvious, you know. Classic Star Wars and Legends. I might do a video of people I want to join on my team if I was to direct Disney Star Wars, because that's a very important role. Anyway, now we get to number 5, Emperor Palpatine. Yes, I am bringing back Palpatine probably a little earlier than Disney did it. Okay, a lot earlier. Because I've learned from Knights of the Old Republic 2 that you could have rituals to bring back certain Sith if you connect to the Force. So it's obvious now that he's not just some clone. In fact, I don't think he should be a clone. Instead, he was resurrected through the Force. Kind of like how in the Old Republic era of the games, if you guys played it, Valkorion was one of many characters that actually was the original Emperor, but resurrected himself multiple times. It's very important to note this because you can't just randomly do that unless you have some sort of underlying background for the whole why did Palpatine come back in the first place instead of just randomly doing it just to save a franchise. You think Star Wars would learn that?
Catholic tonight!
You guys were waiting for this? Now it's time to reveal 5 characters that should not be in Disney Star Wars if I directed it. The obvious number 1, Rose Tico. Look, Rose Tico should have been a much developed character, but based on how she's been used in The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, it basically was kind of no use. I mean, she was there to help Finn find the Master Codebreaker, which that scene alone, in my opinion, was just kind of forced a little bit. And it definitely didn't make a lot of sense because it completely went off from the actual plotline, in my opinion, and it kind of messed things up. Plus, she got into a bit of a attempted love triangle between Finn and Rey a little bit, considering that Finn had his feelings for Rey, so I don't understand how that kind of went on the wayside. And no offense, after her sister Paige Tico, that's her sister's name who sacrificed herself, by the way, she kind of was upset, and that one line that she says, "Sometimes we just need to cling to those we love." During a war, you need to really think about what you just said there. It's one thing to cling to those you love, but it's another to completely sacrifice yourself to protect those you love. So, if you're going to be reckless just to save someone at the risk of trying to priestly kill everyone else in the rebellion, that's kind of selfish. I'm sorry, but Rose Tico is a definite number 1. Number 2, Vice Admiral Emilian Holdo. Ugh. Can you name another character that's frustrating? Well, besides her being a very frustrating character, and possibly didn't tell people what was going on, or even give them a plan in the midst of war, that basically is Holdo. Holdo became a very hated character because she was like, you just gotta trust me, but she never told him that she planned to basically help the rebellion flee, which if she did tell them, there should have been probably no rebellion in of itself from Poe Dameron and his crew, which, yeah, that was kind of But Holdo also, while she sacrificed herself basically to help the Resistance get away from the First Order, it was the logic that made no sense, and that's just poor writing. Now, it's another thing with the hyperspace again, which that has been a highly debated discussion. And basically, you gotta just plan out the hyperspace and not just go like, hyperspace explosion. So yeah, that basically didn't make sense. Her sacrifice was good
it helped them, but the logic made no sense. She should have been a developed character, but because of how she was treated, she basically should not be in there. Oh, also, if Admiral Akbar made it, she probably wouldn't be in there either. Number 3, DJ. For those who don't know, DJ was the prisoner with Rose and Finn when they were looking for the Codebreaker, and then the guy claimed that he could get him out, and he was the Codebreaker and all that. He was briefly there. He was not really much of a major character, but he ended up betraying him to the First Order for money. He's like, sorry. Look, dude, I'm sorry, but that's kind of short-lived. He's only a minor character, I know, but he shouldn't be in there because it made kind of like another push away from the actual plotline a little bit, in my opinion. And also, it kind of made it look like he basically didn't care too much until he got money. And sadly, as you guys know, Rose and Finn really didn't have that much at all to deal with that. So basically, the portrayal was very harsh. But if he wasn't in there and there was a completely different plot line and all that, his character would not be necessary for the plot, so he's definitely a no. Number 4, Maz Katana. I'm sorry if I misspoke or missay it, but let me explain why she should not be in there. And I know she found the Star Wars lightsaber of Luke Skywalker from Empire Strikes Back. But there is a reason why I don't think she should be part of this, because if you guys want me to explain, let me explain real quick. While she did get the lightsaber because they found it in a trash area on Cloud City, it was completely unnecessary for her to just only show up to show lightsaber for Rey, to get her destiny and all that, but then never really show up too much for the rest of the Star Wars trilogy. Another wasted character by Disney, like really bad. If she was in Star Wars universe in my direction, and she did get the lightsaber, she would actually tell the story. She didn't even tell. She says, oh, another time. Never happened. It never freaking happened. So what's the point of saying another time if you never actually tell the story? That is basically a good slap in the face. Even with the recent news that Daisy Ridley just said that they never had a plan, that really infuriated a lot of fans. Even Star Wars Theory was infuriated by it. So that's not going to go well. But we're not done yet. We still got one more. The last character I will not add in, Zorii Bliss. Before you guys go out in the comments saying, what? She was a enjoyable character. The problem is, though, that's the thing. She was an enjoyable character, but she wasn't mentioned that much in the entire series. Where was she in the beginning of Force Awakens and The Last Jedi? We never knew. It was like, oh, by the way, we're going to go to a planet. There's a friend there. Oh, there she is, Zorii Bliss. Look, you can't just be another one-shot character and expect to get a lot of praise. Some characters, however, do deserve to be just one-shot characters. I get that. But if you don't have a backstory or even a direction, you don't get a lot of respect. However, as Daisy Ridley said, again, they didn't have a plan, so everything kind of went downhill. Now, keep in mind, Poe did give a brief backstory that they had a history. And yes, some one-shot characters do get a lot of love and respect. To clarify myself and correct myself a little bit, it doesn't mean, however, that she was necessary. I mean, she did help him escape, and it did give more backstory to Poe in that sense. But I will be honest, guys, Poe probably will not be getting that much of a story in my series, considering I've already given a backstory. So, rather than Poe being the main character, spoiler alert, he's going to be a very supporting character in the series. But that's another episode later. Now for a couple of honorable mentions. First time I'm doing that, actually, for an honorable mention. The Knights of Ren. The Knights of Ren, again, were supposed to be very good characters, very developed, and very powerful, but they didn't get the full development they deserved. Yet, to everyone's surprise, they probably were very cool to look at, but if there was a lot better writing, they probably would have been much developed and they probably would have been a lot more creative and very terrifying. So chances are they'll probably make it into the final cut when I direct it. If I direct Disney Star Wars. Why I say when I direct it? That's kind of silly. They already made the Star Wars. They're not going to revamp it or anything. Imagine they'd somehow said that a few months later. It's like, we're revamping the Disney trilogy. Like, that's going to happen. They're not going to do that. And the last honorable mention I will definitely bring is General Hux. Some of you might be like, what? That whiner? Well, he was a great character in The Force Awakens, but his character development deteriorated over time in The Last Jedi. Although it was kind of interesting. Here comes the slam! But seriously though, I think if his character was well written, he probably would have been a much better character. His backstory in the comics was very tragic, including bullying and all that. But then again, I think we can safely say, out of all the characters, if there was a lot better writing, a lot better scripts and all that, which one of you actually did send me a script, which, thank you for that, they probably would have had a much better direction. However, these 5 characters that I said I will not bring into Disney Star Wars if I directed it, I'm sorry if you guys like the characters, but this is mainly my opinion. And if you had a lot better writing, the characters probably would have been much, much better.
Thought I'd do a different format today. What is up, guys? Ajmarkle here. Welcome back to If I Direct Disney Star Wars. Different format, I know, but today we're going to be discussing some things. You guys know this is now episode 9. I haven't done it in a while, and first off, as I'm recording this, first off, Merry Christmas to you guys. I know it's days in advance, but it's around the same month where usually Disney releases some movie or series coming out and all that. We all know about that. But now it is time to answer some things on my own series, basically talking about number 1, how did Darth Sidious return? In Legends, he came back into another being in a clone form. But here's how I would do it. In the Old Republic era, it is safe to say that one of the most biggest villains was the Emperor in that universe, who came in many forms. It is revealed in Valkorion, who is the ultimate emperor, that he had multiple forms. So we get to see the Old Republic on that quite a lot, even though they should have done with Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 3. Now, with that said, that means the Emperor, Palpatine, or Sheev Palpatine, basically gave his soul into the Force so he could become the most powerful being in the universe. That's a way of saying he will not die. That will be how he returns, but unfortunately he will not evaporate because some woman who somehow had all these abilities that had to be her grandson, did I just assume her gender? That was a bad thing. Because some woman who basically is a relative / granddaughter was able to defeat him. But seriously though, guys, it's safe to say Palpatine gave his life to the Force, but he will not be destroyed by Rey, but much rather defeated by probably someone else, like Ben Skywalker. Hence the name, Rise of Skywalker. Or maybe Jaina Solo. If I mispronounce it, I apologize. And now the second one. How did they get Anakin / Luke Skywalker's lightsaber? It's kind of obvious, but we all remember in Empire Strikes Back, if you guys watched it, that he was fighting Darth Vader and his hand got cut off. And also, we never see Luke with it again. Yet, it's safe to say that it's possible that the Great Cloud City didn't hold all his trash well and someone found it. Now, we know that Luke's hand was on her, so if it gets graphic enough, they probably saw his hand And because there were not many Jedi, but it was around the time of the rebellion, and most of the people that had most people that had lightsabers were maybe like Sith Lords, and perhaps possible Last Jedi, it's safe to say someone would probably see the lightsaber marks underneath that hand. But it doesn't mean, however, Luke didn't look for it. Perhaps he didn't want to look for it because he probably thought he lost it forever, despite the connection he had with it. So it's safe to say that Luke created the green lightsaber, which I think it's safe to say it's debatable that he will not lose that one at all. He will not lose the green lightsaber at all because obviously there will be a much different confrontation, and he would probably still find it. Now, the third part. Now, some of you are not going to like this, but Obi-Wan having a kid, there's no indication that he had family of any form. So if he had relatives and that was another relative like a brother or sister, who knows? Maybe that's how we can figure it out. However, another theory that could be thrown out is Starkiller basically falling in love with Juno. I'm so out of it right now. Juno. So it's safe to say, though, that Juno and Benedict Starkiller will probably be a thing in canon somehow. But then again, we're going to stick with Obi-Wan. But hey, does this mean Benedict Starkiller will be canon? Yes. Somehow. But remember, in Star Wars Force Unleashed 2, the guy was either a clone or the real thing. I'm going to say he was probably a clone, since no one can really revive from the dead unless it was through a great force ability. So anyway, those are just 4 things I'm just going to say about this. And if you guys want to see more of this, please let me know down in the comments below. And also for you guys, I still have memberships. So here's what's going to happen. Starting in 2021, around that time, I will be breaking down episode 10, which is going to be the first of the 3 movies I will be doing my own direction type of thing. So basically for members, you're going to get part after part after part. But for you guys will get to see the full thing, the full episode in full, while members go piece by piece, and then I compile it together and see it. So episodes 10, 11, and 12, I will confirm, will be the last 3 episodes of If I Direct Disney Star Wars, and also will be the beginning of showing how I would do it. And I will say The Last Jedi will not be a title for episode 11. And episode 12 will keep The Rise of Skywalker, and we will definitely keep The Force Awakens. That's all I will confirm.
In The Force Awakens, Poe will obviously go out to bring a message about Luke Skywalker's location. And the reason Luke actually hid there is not because he's scared. It's a matter of fact, he's actually trying to protect the Resistance from him, because a little bit of an Easter egg from Empire Strikes Back and in Return of the Jedi, he actually knew that if he was there, he would be putting them in danger because he had a connection. In this case, he had a connection with Jason Solo. I'm not calling him Ben. Ben's going to be for his son, Ben Skywalker, which is a character from Legends, which will be brought up later. And of course, now that I brought up this part about Poe, he does go bring out the message, and he gets tapped by the First Order, like in the Force Awakens movie. And then he ends up going out there to try to protect himself, gets captured, and in his last effort, he resisted the torture device, but it didn't work. Kylo was able to get information out of him, and Poe was severely injured. And then Ben comes over to help him, but Poe was dying. Poe knew that he was dying, so he trusts Finn, who ended up defecting from the First Order, to give a message to the Resistance and tell him everything that's happened, including try to find BB-8 so he can give the message to him. So in basic terms, Finn at that moment, from leaving the First Order, he automatically became part of the Resistance. So he didn't lie to Rey when he meets her on Jakku.
speaking of Rey, here's a little more about her real quick, in my own interpretation. She had years of training after her parents died, but again, she didn't really know that for a long time. And also, Rey had so many years of training that she even knew some self-defense and basically knew how to survive on her own. So it wasn't a matter of a Mary Sue or a random buildup of a strong female role model. As a matter of fact, she's a representation of that no matter what you are, whether it's male or female, you work hard at what you do and still become very stronger regardless. So Rey does defeat some of the scavengers, which that's what she is, in order to become a better character. And even to the point where Rey ends up becoming a strong character, she ends up becoming very popular because of the training she will later be given. So after Rey and Finn meet up, it gets to a point where they find the Millennium Falcon, which was originally stolen, but they were able to get into it because Rey learned how to basically take advantage of controls, that she did have her own ship on Jakku. And Finn, despite being part of the cleaning department, secretly learned some tactical maneuvers because he was on a TIE fighter in the past as part of his training by Captain Phasma, who will be a recurring character rather than being killed off in the original Last Jedi. And then things get even more darker when Rey and Finn not only meet Han Solo and Chewbacca, and it even gets to a point where they have to go back to finding Leia, who is the leader of Resistance. And she kept the name Organa, but she also kept Solo because she and her husband were separated because of what their son did to the original Jedi Order, which caused Luke to go back into training, much like Obi-Wan did when Anakin fell to the dark side. So as things go on though, they will go into training, and Finn will learn how to use a blaster more often, along with Rey. They both get trained by Han, but because they were both Force sensitive, because it was revealed that Finn had secretly learned to meditate, Leia would help them learn the ways of the Force. And they would stage a plan to go against the First Order, which did not have Starkiller Base. Instead, they went to an ancient Sith planet called Korriban, which was they were able to find some ancient Sith texts so they could become very powerful. And they would try to find more documents that would back it up. They even had old Sith computers back then on Korriban so they can get a lot more information. So as things continue to go on, the war between the First Order and Resistance was starting to go at a head. Because the Resistance, they wanted to find Luke, but Leia told them off that you can't go out and find Luke. He will find us, which is true. Luke would make the decision if he wants to reveal himself to become a very powerful leader. But he knew that because of his connection with Jason, he would endanger them. And Leia would possibly endanger them too, so rather, she would have to be in the shadows. Han Solo kept the promise though, that he would help lead. And other than he is not Force sensitive, he would still lead. So here's what ends up happening. Rey does still go through lightsaber training with Leia. And she would still go through more training to learn how to defend herself. But she was not ready for lightsaber combat yet in this movie. Instead, she would be ready to face off against Kylo Ren in the future. And she was still Force sensitive, so her ability to use the Force was still kind of weak, despite her very strong with Palpatine. Because Force isn't just something that you can just randomly grow overnight. Instead, you would have to be very focused and train yourself to be better. This will also conclude that Rey is not just some random person that was strong. She had a lot of training. And the next episodes I will do, which are 11 and 12, will also bring up a second point. So now that that's out of the way, the Resistance fighters began their first attack on a whole bunch of Star Destroyers by the First Order. So it was more of a space war. And they would end up trying to find a massive ship that would control everything. But they need someone that knew about battle meditation. No one in this universe knew a lot about battle meditation. Rey could be a possibility, but she still hasn't learned about the Force yet. But Kylo Ren, taking the advantage he had, decided he wanted to look for her. And during a brief fight between the Resistance fighters, Kylo Ren overwhelmed them, and Leia realizing that her son was getting out of control, decided to fight him, and Han joins the fight. In the brief fight, Chewbacca wounds Kylo Ren because Kylo allowed his anger to blind him like Anakin and was wounded. This will also conclude that Kylo Ren never really was a strong Sith Lord in the first place, and was more of a dark Jedi. So he had a lot of training. But during the fight, the Resistance had to flee because of another airborne attack. A lot of people died during the war, so they had to regroup and went to another area. Now, they didn't really have a plan to go to. They tried to go to Yavin 4, but it was damaged. And they tried to go to Dantooine, but they really didn't have much luck there. So they had to go to another planet that was very highly known, despite its politics, Coruscant, where they would reside at the end of the first of the Disney sequel trilogy if I directed it, so they would regroup and try again. When we last left off, Luke and Ben have met each other, and they have decided to finally catch up after several years of being separated. At the time, Ben admitted that he had held a grudge against his own father because he felt abandoned. Someone that worked hard in the Order was abandoned when everything fell apart. That was simply not true. He actually cut himself from the Force from his own father because he did not want to be close to him due to his anger. Luke understood completely, and they worked to reconcile their relationship as father and son. However, their connection to the Force reignited Jason, aka Kylo Ren, the nephew of Luke and cousin of Ben. So he decided to go on a journey to get to his own uncle and try to take him down. Meanwhile, the Resistance is on Coruscant. During this time, Rey was being trained by Leia and Finn was being trained by Han Solo, but they alternate from time to time because Han believed that a lightsaber is not enough because he has very, very high doubts about the Force. But on the other side, Leia agreed with him because they should learn training on both ends so they would not rely on one side. Make sense? Okay, so in the end of the whole training, they had their criticisms, they had their advice, and they had lessons to relearn from time to time. During this time, both Finn and Rey have connected to the Force, and then they found Luke through the Force. Unfortunately though, they also felt Kylo Ren, so they decided to get to Luke on the island. However, the Millennium Falcon was a no-go because the Millennium Falcon was going to be used in an upcoming battle should there be one over Coruscant. And also, there was a new ship that was being built called the Dameron. The Dameron was there to commemorate Poe Dameron, who sacrificed his life for the Resistance in the hands of Kylo Ren. So the Dameron, a new custom ship, was sent to go to the island. It was a race against time though, as Kylo Ren was going on his own personal shuttle to go get to his uncle. But as he was getting there, something stopped him. He felt another presence. someone else was also going there, but he was very scared. He had not heard from this person in a long time, and he thought she was dead. Meanwhile, the Resistance, knowing that there was going to be a battle, decided to prep up. Chewbacca was the captain of the Millennium Falcon, while Han Solo shocked everyone by getting an X-Wing. This shocked a lot of people because he is mainly known for piloting the Millennium Falcon, but something told him that this would be a battle that he might die in. So in order to keep the Millennium Falcon safe, he put it in the hands of Chewbacca. Chewbacca made some pretty bold moves. He called in Admiral Akbar and some of his men to join him, and R2-D2 and C-3PO to help him out as well. R2-D2 helped with the computer and tracking on the Falcon. C-3PO helped with translation in case there was some foreign translation whatsoever, and they needed to keep him safe. And Chewbacca just needed a second set of eyes, so Admiral Akbar was basically in command. Lando was not there because he was still on Cloud City. We'll get to that in a moment. So during this whole thing, Luke had talked to Rey and Finn, as well as learning that there is someone else. Ben also got into conversation with both of them and was very impressed with their Force abilities and their stories. Finn's story was revealed to be very tragic. He was taken from his parents as a young boy, and as a result, he was trained in the Empire, well, First Order. During this time, he was part of the cleaning crew, but he also had training in blasting, and he had training in, well, self-defense. Over time, he would later secretly learn to meditate. This was eventually pointed out, but Captain Phasma was not very happy when she found out Finn had defected to the Resistance. So she wanted to go after him, but she would later find out he wasn't there in the battle and was elsewhere. But Captain Phasma had decided to one day and swore revenge to find Finn and take care of him once and for all. Meanwhile, Snoke and Kylo Ren had a very, very harsh discussion. He called him a coward, Snoke that is, for not going after Luke and for not being able to handle the pressure of some other person. And he said, "You haven't seen her in years. She is weak. You are strong." Snoke belittled him so badly. His doubts, however, were replaced with anger, rage, and even vengeance at his master, but swore that one day that he would not only be very powerful, but he would also overtake him. What he did not know was that Snoke had gone into the archives of Korriban and knew about other Siths, including even Darth Nihilus, a guy who consumed planets and their life force to get stronger. And he would later encourage Kylo Ren about this. Meanwhile, though, Luke told Rey, Finn, and Ben that one day they would have to face their biggest challenge, but they can no longer do it on the island because now that some of the enemies know, they have to move. Over time, Rey had already learned a lot about her lightsaber training and was already beginning to understand more about the Force. Finn did too, impressing even Ben. However, even Luke said, "You are yet to be ready for the real battle. You are very inexperienced when it comes to lightsaber training. Even though I am a Jedi Master, Grandmaster, I have a lot of learning to do myself. And thankfully, I have learned quite a lot." So, they decide to make a plan to look out for anyone else that could help. And they would divide and conquer to get to other planets for help and get back to the Resistance. Luke decided he would return to the Resistance and be able to help them, even at the risk. Back at the space battle, things were going south quickly. The First Order had Star Destroyers and a balanced fleet, while the Resistance was more sporadic. Han knew that they would be in trouble if he didn't do something. The Millennium Falcon took several hits, but launched a couple of blasts right at the Star Destroyers and knocked down a couple. Realizing that their fleet was very strategic, Han decided the only way he was able to stop it is if he launches an attack right at the starboard of the Star Destroyer and destroy it, causing it to collapse on another, resulting in a chain reaction and explosion to divide the First Order. But in doing so, Han knew it would cost him his life, so he launched. In a breeze, people watched as the X-Wing went right at the starboard, and everyone was horrified. Leia was horrified, Chewbacca was horrified, and everyone just watched as it crashed right into the starboard. It resulted in it suddenly diving down and destroyed another Star Destroyer underneath it, and it resulted in the chemical reaction that everyone expected from the fuel. It was a massive blow to the First Order, but it came at a great cost to the Resistance, as one of their greatest pilots has sacrificed his life for the Resistance. People felt it from all over the galaxy, including Luke, realizing that his best friend, Han Solo, had died. Then Luke decided it was time to reveal his communicator. He hid a communicator on him in case he needed to contact someone, and that someone was Lando Calrissian on Cloud City. They were making plans to go there when a figure came out. A female figure that no one expected to survive, but she did. Her name? Jaina Solo. Jaina Solo had come out of hiding. The twin sister of Jason. The cousin of Ben. And everyone was shocked to see her. She was given the info of what's been going on over the years, including their plans. This would be a massive turnaround for the Resistance when Jaina comes, but Jaina also had plans to go face to face with her brother, even if it could cost her life. Meanwhile, the Resistance had a funeral for the fallen Han Solo, and they will never forget him for what he did. And the Resistance knew it was time to once again move to another galaxy, and knew that the battle was not over, but they knew the war would eventually come to an end. Meanwhile, Snoke also sensed Jaina and swore he would get her because she was more powerful than her brother. He sensed her doubts, her weaknesses, her anger, and he wanted to entice her to the dark side. Luke sensed this and warned Jaina. And Leia, she knew that there will be peace very soon, but she also hid a secret of her own. She was not 100% anymore, and the Resistance had to go on without her.
It's time for the Jedi to make a choice, for the fate of the galaxy rests in their hands.
It has been so long since I did this series, but now it's time to end it. It has been 2 years since Luke has made a plan to work with the Resistance, and they had to do more training. Jaina Solo has come with them, and Rey and Jaina would train together as well as learn about each other as best friends. Heck, even like sisters. Luke made contact with Lando and took Finn with him on a private fighter to Cloud City, where father and son, that is right, Finn is Lando's son. They reconcile. The story goes, Lando was actually married twice, but the first wife died not bearing him any children, and the second wife died trying to protect Finn from the First Order, but failed and died trying to save him. Lando was shocked and heartbroken, but resisted the First Order for a long time, but had to go into hiding to protect his people. But with Luke telling him it's time to return to the Resistance and told him what happened to Han, Lando decided to take over, for that was what his friend Han would want. Meanwhile, Leia was struggling with a broken heart for the past 2 years and was getting sicker and sicker, but used the Force to keep going and lead the Resistance. But sensing her health was declining, Luke would take over as the Resistance leader. Finn, on the other hand, would train with his son, Ben Skywalker, and over time, in those 2 years, the Resistance would continue their journey throughout the galaxy, even as far to go to Hoth. Luke sadly remembered that planet, and it was very, very cold. But even throughout the 2 years, they never stayed in one area of the planet forever. Finally, they decided to go to Typho, and everything began to unravel. Once that happened, that's when they uncovered secrets of the Jedi and a Jedi that fell to the dark side on that planet. But while that was going on, Snoke had been waiting for Jaina for 2 years and decided to spring his trap by connecting with the Force and connecting to Jaina, messing with her head with visions, and even using her own brother, who is yet to earn a new Sith name. So he goes to Korriban to learn about the most immortal Sith, Tenebrae, that used to be known as Vistius and Valkorion. While learning about his power, he plotted that he would grow and he would learn the ultimate power and take over the entire First Order once and for all. And he was getting more and more eager to do this. Snoke sensed his eagerness, and so he attempted to connect with Jaina more, so he would plan for both siblings to face each other once and for all. And then, when Kylo Ren, Jacen Solo, returned to Snoke, he would get his new Sith name. Meanwhile, Captain Phasma went on a solo mission to Typho and went for Finn. Finn sensed this and sensed that she had a plan to strategically distract people while she went for Finn.
Upon sensing the trouble and sensing his former master/leader amongst him,
Finn had to connect with the Force, and that's when he uncovered battle meditation. Battle meditation in the Force is basically used to control any battle into Jedi favor or turn against them. So, Finn decided to use battle meditation to warn the Resistance on Typho to get ready for any attack. Lando would immediately go into the Millennium Falcon to get ready for the space battle. Jaina and Rey went on their fighters as they were sensed to go to Duxon, a planet not far from Alderaan. Once they were there, however, Jacen was waiting, now as Darth Caedus, the new Sith. Rey and Jaina both fought hard against him, and he used every sort of trick they tried, using the Force, every lightsaber ability they could use, any form they could try. Suddenly, Rey was taken off guard and got knocked out, and Jaina got captured. Everything was going against the Resistance at that moment. Even though Finn had battle meditation and fought Phasma, Phasma knew his weakness and began to toy with him and even mocked him. And it got even worse when Finn's emotions were getting out of hand. Rey would get up and would be shocked to find Jaina missing and sense that she was captured. It was getting hopeless, so she had to go back to the Resistance on Typho. Once she returned, she explained what happened. Leia was shocked, but felt very certain that Snoke set this whole thing up. And to make it worse, she had to accept her son, Jacen, was gone for good. She couldn't save him. He had to make the choice, and he made the choice and became a Sith, Darth Caedus. And to make it worse, she might lose her daughter to the dark side too, sensing they could use sibling against sibling to determine who becomes the ultimate Sith. And Rey was very concerned, but Luke said, "It is time for you to save her, and we trust you that you have learned for the past 2 years of your training to go out there and find her." And Rey decided to use the Force and tried to begin her long journey to find her and, if possible, save her before it's too late. As she was about to leave, she bumps into Finn, who explains to her what happened between him and Captain Phasma. It was revealed that Captain Phasma's attempt to take Finn down had failed, and Finn used his strength and struck her down hard with the blade of the blue lightsaber he held, ending Captain Phasma's reign of terror and her revenge plot. As for the rest that attempted to distract the resistance, Finn took advantage of their attacks and defeated them. But he knew this was just the beginning, as Snoke has Jaina, and her and Jason fighting for the ultimate Sith, and possibly going to try and use Rey as well, could mean catastrophic for the fate of the galaxy. So, Finn would lead the airstrike team under Gold Leader, and he would help them in his own ship to defeat the First Order, as they would have a more strategic plan, but he would be under Lando Calrissian, his father. Now that has been set up, Rey went on her own ship, not the Millennium Falcon because Chewbacca and Lando have it, and went on a search for Jaina. Meanwhile, Snoke had Jason, now Darth Caedus, and Jaina locked in and ready to fight each other. It was going to be a glorious fight. Twin versus twin. Sibling versus sibling. A long rivalry was going to brew, as the fate of the galaxy could be determined. Even with Finn's battle meditation, if he loses, they could end up joining him, or one could join Snoke, and they would become the ultimate empire like Tenebrae would want. So, the fight was beginning to brew. Rey was getting concerned as she was fighting Jaina, but she sensed a more darker presence in the Force, sensing that Jaina was succumbing to her emotions of the dark side. As she had learned from Luke, emotions themselves don't lead you to the dark side, but rather the negativity of the emotions and the negativity of the anger consuming you can lead you to the dark side. This is an important part because the misconception of love, attraction, and connection to someone leading to the dark side is false, but rather allow yourself to be consumed by your emotions and passion consume you, that it becomes your way of thinking and destroys who you are as your identity. Every person has to have those things in order to grow. They can't suppress them. Somebody, even the old Jedi, had failed, and the Sith took advantage of that. Rey would go as far as she could until she went to the planet Exegol, where the Force was tainted in complete darkness. Rey would go alone, but senses her masters, Leia and Luke's words comforting her, and as she got closer, a Force ghost, a Bastila Shan, appeared and told her, "Do not let your guard down," and warned her that it would be possible that Snoke would lead her down the dark path. And the next thing she knew, Anakin appeared. Even Ahsoka appeared. Several Jedi Masters and people who had went with the Force appeared. Rey wasn't all the Jedi, but she was surrounded by Jedi, and they told her that her destiny is really up to her in the end. Finn would one day be a Jedi Master himself. Jaina, if she resists, would too, and Rey would be a Jedi Master herself. But in order for that to happen, they would have to face their biggest trials. Meanwhile, over Typho, the First Order was landing an assault plan, ready to attack. And with the leader gone, the new leader of the First Order was not really a person, but a Sith ghost. It was none other than Darth Malak. Darth Malak in the Force was a strong warrior. He was a Sith after his Jedi attack against the Mandalorians back in the Old Republic days. But then other Sith joined. It was an all-out Sith spirit combined together in the space galaxy. It was
a possible hopeless battle, or so it seems. Luke sensed it, Finn sensed it, and anyone with even a hint of force sensitivity sensed it. So Luke told Finn, as well as Ben, to stand together. Ben would go in his ship, and he, Finn, and Luke together would face the greatest trial of all time. And Leia used the last of her force to give them hope, as well as risk her life doing so. What Leia did was give them peace. And they would also understand that through peace, there is hope. And with hope lost, the battle is lost. But with hope, battles can be won. But the most important thing they would learn is being a team and working together. This would be vital. Back on Exegol, Rey would find Jaina fighting her twin brother, and Rey sensed the darkness about to consume her as her emotions were all over the place. Rey launched an attack of her own and knocked down Darth Cadence. And Jaina saw Rey and realized that Rey was alive and was ready to fight, because Snoke and Darth Cadence have lied to her, saying they killed Rey. But Jaina also said, "This is not a matter for you to fight." But Rey said, "Neither is you falling to the dark side." Snoke would take advantage of this and use a force attack of Sith lightning. Rey and Jaina both resisted, and Darth Cadence attempted to use Sith lightning himself. Combined, it was very powerful. Then a force explosion of a sonic boom knocked them back. As they got up, Darth Cadence launched an attack, and Jaina was about to strike a blow when Rey force pushed her out of the way, sensing her anger in a negative light, and defended herself. And Darth Cadence did not watch where he was going, and the blade went right through his chest, ending him. Snoke, seeing that Rey resisted the dark side and Jaina's fall was thwarted, was enraged. A massive blow of Sith lightning attacked. When out of the blue, a Force ghost appeared. It was Anakin himself. The Chosen One had appeared. Rey and Jaina could not defeat Snoke, not like this. Anakin then said, "You must work together if you want to defeat, but let me and others lead." Together, the Force spirits of the Jedi, combined with Jaina and Rey, would defeat Snoke for good. As for the space battle over Typho, Luke, Ben, and Finn together would fight against the First Order, and the spirits of the Sith that attempted to cripple the Resistance. With all the lies, all the voices trying to scream into the minds of the pilots and the minds of even Ben himself. It was an emotional whirlwind of emotions, but they kept their heads straight. And with Finn's battle meditation and using the last of the Force ability within him because he was getting exhausted, they were able to turn the tide and destroy the First Order once and for all. Lando would launch a devastating torpedo attack on the main Star Destroyer as well as the main ships, and then everything that the First Order had was vaporized. About the same time, Snoke's robe fell to the ground, and Rey and Jaina looked at each other, and Jaina said, "I'm sorry. I did the wrong thing, letting my emotions get the better of me." Rey responded with, "It's gonna happen to anyone. I got impatient several times before. It is common to make mistakes, even if you are a master. Even I had to learn myself." Rey would forgive Jaina, and they both left Exegol for good. As they went back to Typho, there was a group of people in the tent of Leia. There, Leia was waiting for them, and Jaina would come over. And Luke stood with them and said, "Her time is coming." And as they watched, Leia said to them, "I am proud of you." And then she looked to Luke, who had an announcement. To Jaina, and Ben, as well as Rey and Finn, I grant you guys the rank of Jedi Masters. And I want you to lead a new Jedi Academy throughout the galaxy, because no matter how many enemies we defeat, someone will always come to disrupt the galaxy. And together, we can protect those who can't defend themselves and train them to defend themselves. No one will be helpless. Leia smiled, and then she gave her final breath and died on her bed. She died being a warrior for the Resistance, and she gave everything she got, even with the broken heart she had over losing Han. And thus ends the Resistance and begins, once again, a new republic and a beginning of government functioning once again outside the First Order. Jaina would later fall in love and marry, as well as Ben married someone else. But the most important couple, Finn and Rey, they would get married and they would have a family for the future. As for Luke, he would be the Jedi Grand Master to the end of his life, and he knew that he would have a whole new generation of Jedi that would grow. And for Lando, he would too stay and go to great lengths to be general of the Republic Army with the support of Cloud City and the freedom they needed. And thus, there was peace. That is the end, finally, of If I Directed Disney Star Wars. And honestly, this took way too long to do. If you guys enjoyed this podcast series, comment below, tell your friends about it, and please share the video. I hope you guys enjoy. God bless you, rock. Don't forget it.